I'm hoping it's two male cops that are pulling me over, and I have no issues with females. I worked with females, and the females I worked with admitted they are more likely to retract their firearm than the two males because of the physical attributes that they have to account for. John, do you agree with my assessment? I would be, for me, my opinion, I would rather two big guys pull me over than two females. What do you think?
I always would rather someone who's less nervous. Yeah. So I'm gonna say right now, I don't want to say, because again, I don't want to do what they do. I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, females. If I'm saying like, when we look overall at females, females tend not to be in law enforcement, right? Females tend not to be in law enforcement. Females tend not to exhibit those masculine traits. Females tend to not deal well in confrontational physical situations.
Exactly.
That's not every female. So you could get pulled over by two females that are awesome and that are cool and that could read the situation, read the data points, and unintimidated. However, you could get pulled over. The likelihood is you're going to get pulled over by two females that aren't in that don't exhibit that masculine trait and are afraid. And honestly, today, it's probably true for the younger males as well too. You know what I mean? They're going to be
like a testosterone.
And like, so I'm not going to like group say females, but yes, overall, if I had to look, I would say less likely that two females pulling you over or reading a situation correctly if they feel they're outnumbered or overpowered, right? And I'm just saying, because a lot of people don't do well in confrontation. There are not a lot of people in society, male or female, right? So when you're in that scenario, you don't really want to be, you ever see the big guys? You ever pull like a 6'6" guy over and he's about 300 pounds and he's all muscle and he could rip your head off? And he's like, "Hey, sir, how you doing, sir?" And he's like overly nice. And you're like, "Dude, I'm not easy. Like, I'm just, you whatever happened, take it easy." But he knows that he does not want you to be scared, right? He's like, "I know I'm a big dude. I don't want you to be scared." So yeah, I mean, I like, again, I think what this 30 for 30 initiative is based on a lot of misrepresentation of males. It's based on a lot of misrepresentation of policing. Did we go up now? Are we up on YouTube?
All right. I got to check. While you do that, I just want to say this. The reason why I bring up that point, first of all, there's nothing wrong with admitting that we have limitations and capabilities. I have daughters and I have a son. And I always tell my daughters and I tell my son that men have superpowers and women have superpowers. Some are different. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of being different. And the reason why I bring up that scenario is because women, ultimately, the overwhelming majority of women, their physical attributes are going to be inferior to men. And women are going to be superior when it comes to nurturing people. And the reason why I bring this up is because Tanya Meisenholzer in the article, it doesn't say, well, because we have less females in law enforcement, that's why we have less engagement. What she's doing is she's actually discriminating and flipping the coin against men. And she's trying to make women appear to be the superior attributes for law enforcement. And to me, it's completely conjecture. It's totally opinionated, because based on what fact? When you have a profession that is top heavy with men, you have few females in this law enforcement profession. So how could you even make that assessment? You don't have the numbers to actually make a proper assessment. So that's why I bring that up when I talk about those. It's complete discrimination, saying that women are less likely to engage. I would say that two female police officers in that situation, and I agree, that's called mirroring. When you get that big guy getting out of the car, he wants to keep you calm because he doesn't want you to pull out your firearm. He wants you to feel safe, because ultimately that's the equalizer, right? Some guy who's 6'5", if he's dealing with two small officers, and not just females, men also, that's the equalizer. to even out the scales is that firearm. But I do believe that men are less likely, and because I've seen it, this is anecdotal experience, I've seen men are less likely. There are some men that's their crutch, but the overwhelming majority of men, masculine men that have the attributes to do policing, are less likely to retract their firearms in a situation that's getting hairy than female police officers. And I've seen it myself because that tips the scales, that firearm. So that's why I say, me personally, God forbid I was in a situation, if I was accused of something serious, I'd rather that there were two large male police officers to have that encounter than two small female police. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of male police officers I wouldn't want to work with that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. But now we're talking about the overwhelming majority. But when we talk about Tanya Meisenholder, there's no factual information, and she's going on the fact that there's less women in the profession. And it makes sense. Yes, there's less women. There's going to be less engagement. But why? She's not talking about the limitations and capabilities. She's actually flipped the coin and totally discriminated against men. And what she's saying is that we have too many men because men are aggressive. That's what she's saying. She's not saying that men are use assertive control. She's saying they're aggressive and out of control. That's the comparison that she's making.
Yeah, so I was with my daughter yesterday. We had to take a long drive, and we were just in the car and we were just talking, and then I just was curious. So my daughter's 12, she's going to be 13, and I just said to her, I said, who do you think is more likely to use force against violent perpetrators? Male police officers or female police officers? And she said male. And I was like, why? Why do you think that? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason you think that. Like, why'd you just instantly say male? And she said, well, men are usually bigger and stronger. And then I said, well, so what do you think? Do you think that only men should be cops? And she goes, no, women could be cops. She goes, some women could be stronger than men. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, if you call 911 though, and you call 911 and there are big dudes outside and they're doing something crazy, who do you want to respond? And then she's only 12, dude, and she was like, I just want the people who would be best for the job. I don't care if they're a man or a female. I just want the people that'll get those people. And I was like, okay. I said, but do you think that, I said, who do you think arrests more violent perpetrators, male or female? And she said male. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know. And the fact is, that's a fact. That's accurate. My daughter never studied police statistics. I never spoke. That was the first time I've ever spoken to her about policing. But yet she inherently knows something. At 12 years old, that's not a social construct. That's because she sees daddy, she observes the world, she knows what goes on in the world, and she thinks that violent perpetrators get arrested by males more often, which leads male police officers to have more complaints than female officers, right? So, and then this is from CCRB's website. The title of this is not accurate. This says, what is the gender breakdown of active NYPD officers? This is what is the gender breakdown of active who have a complaint, CCRB complaint. 26% of all cops in the NYPD who are male have at least one CCRB. Have had complaints against them in 2024. 26.625% in 2024 males in the NYPD have had complaints against them. 7% of the complaints compromise females. So have at least one CCRB complaint. Does that mean that males are more aggressive? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it could also just mean that they're dominant in the profession. They're dominant in the profession. Males typically are more aggressive, however. That's not a social construct. That doesn't, but this having, now when we bring it to police complaints, though, it's totally, it's not the same as when we're looking at, here's NYPD officers with at least one complaint. And as a 210. This is overall. So that's just how long they're on the job. So you got 8,640 current active males on the job. With 26% of the job. 26% of the job has at least one complaint. 11% of females have at least one complaint. So, and then when you go to substantiations, it about holds the same. But does that mean that males are more aggressive than females? This statistic does not show that. A good statistic to show that is the jails. Look how many males are in prison versus how many females are in prison. That shows aggressive, right? Traditionally, women usually don't go to jail. Does that mean that they commit crimes less at a less rate?
Before we go into this, I want to say good morning to Rich Rod. Shout out to you, brother. He says good morning, John, Eric, and all that are on the channel. Thank you so much at this point. We're about 25 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. Now, John, first of all, before I speak on this chart, I just want to say this shows that your daughter at the age of 12 has more common sense than an academic such as Dr. Tanya Meisenholder. She has more common sense because she actually sees the world for what it is. I think there's nothing wrong with saying that men have superpowers and women have superpowers, but they're different. They're different. My wife is much more nurturing than I am, and I'm the protector. And that's the way it should be. There's nothing wrong with having a traditional masculine relationship, right? I mean, and we talked about that. We talked about making the NYPD masculine again. And when we say that, we don't say let's get rid of females. We never said let's discriminate against females. Let's discriminate against men. What we said is that in order to be effective police officer, despite gender, you need masculine traits. That is something that we spoke about and we really dove into, that you need masculine traits. There are feminine traits that sometimes men need to exhibit in certain situations. You know, God forbid you're in a situation where someone had lost their lives and you're addressing a family. If you're a detective and you have to notify a family of someone's loss, you're going to exemplify those feminine traits. You're going to be nurturing. You're going to be empathetic, compassionate. But when we're faced with confrontation, physical confrontation, potentially a violent encounter, we need those masculine traits, those strong traits. That goes for men and women. Now, according to that chart that you had pulled up, it actually indicates that women are getting an alarming higher rate of complaints percentage-wise in comparison to the amount of females that actually compromise the police department in comparison to men. About a quarter of the men in the entire police department are getting a complaint, while 11% of the females, while there's a substantial less amount of females on the job. And that's why I say when it comes to Dr. Tanya Meisenholder, her information is complete conjecture. Where is that study? Who conducted that study? I would like to know. I tell you right now, she particular suffers from the Dunning-Kruger effect. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? That's the less you know about a profession, the more that you think you could do it. And Tanya Meisenholder, while she claims to be an academic and also understand law enforcement because of her many years working with law enforcement agencies, not as a police officer, but in the backgrounds, claims to understand police work. But she's looking at it from an armchair critic. And I think that she's completely inaccurate in her assessment, and her assessments are discriminatory. And John, I think you bring up a great point. When we talk about incarcerations, the overwhelming majority of incarcerations are men, and men of a specific type. Men that are extremely aggressive, that suffer from mental illness, that need to be combated and need to be brought into justice by men or women with those masculine traits. And the overwhelming majority of law enforcement officers need those masculine traits. And the overwhelming majority of potential candidates are going to be men with extreme amount of masculine traits and also those physical attributes that are needed. So I just want to go even further into it. In the article, she talks about physical fitness. And she makes the correlation, and we can see how the correlation goes into Juanita Holmes, right? The former deputy chief of the police department, where Juanita Holmes lowered their standards for the police academy. And the explanation was that certain physical fitness traits that are needed for the police academy and for graduation do not equate to the attributes that you need in the field. And that's completely inaccurate. So, according to Tanya Meisenholder, she says that women have difficulty in climbing and jumping the wall for the physical fitness test. And Tanya Meisenholder, according to the article, she says that it's how often do police officers actually climb a wall or a fence, and is this necessary? And that wall actually eradicates and doesn't allow women to graduate because that's a hurdle for them when it's not necessary anyway. And I completely don't agree. Most likely, as a police officer, you're not going to go out and run a mile and a half. But what we need to know is, do you have the physical ability? Can your heart handle to be pressure tested in certain situations? If you need to climb that wall, can you? Do you have the physical capabilities to be put in a situation where you're so pressure tested that your life is on the line and maybe someone else's, and you do need to climb that fence? What is your thought on the physical fitness standards when it comes to women for law enforcement, according to Tanya Meisenholder?
Yeah, I think, again, we're just hearing a lowering of standards, because I've seen women go right over that wall and I've seen men not get over that wall. So when she says overall women struggle with it, when we look at women as a whole, okay, when we look at women as a whole, traditionally they don't enter masculine professions like policing, like being a plumber, like being a garbage man, right? Garbage man, or not in sanitation. Traditionally, does that mean that we don't have females that are much better suited than males to be cops, to be plumbers, to work in sanitation? No, it doesn't mean that. Of course we do. Of course there are women that are going to be outliers. But traditionally we don't. So that doesn't mean we should lower standards. When we go back to the episode we did on Tanya Meisenholder, the one part that really sticks out in my head is when, because it's always like, okay, this sounds great. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Law enforcement should be compromised at 30% women by 2030. Well, okay, you're having a problem overall getting any type of recruit. Now you're going to pick the gender of recruit. Are we going to start to pick the race as well? Because you can't already, you're taking the scraps of whoever is coming at this point. And one of the things she said was that male blacks were having a problem. We're having a problem passing the psychological test. And that was a key proponent of what they alleviated to meet their diversity agenda. So basically, she said during that interview that they allowed things that they didn't allow in the past to meet a goal. They lowered the standards. They lowered the psychological standard. So now, does that mean that, oh, well, now every black person that came in is under a lowered standard? No. That means that every person that took that test, white, black, Hispanic, male, female, whoever, came in under a set of lowered standards. So that means that you have male whites, females, male blacks, male Hispanics, and everybody else that came in that possibly is there under a lowered standard of passing a psychological test. And again, this is what we're doing when we're taking away the wall. Oh, what cop needs to run a mile and a half? Every cop. What cop needs to get over a wall? Every cop. That's absolutely, it's the academia armchair thing. It's like, oh, I have a simple solution. Well, just take that away. There's a hurdle there. So let's remove that hurdle. It's like, no, that hurdle's there for a reason. There are standards for a reason. And, and she goes on to say that there are males that are slobs and can't get over that wall. She's right. And that in itself is a problem. But they got over that wall originally. And we're not talking about what happens after. We're talking about police recruitment and you're talking about lowering standards of police recruitment, yet you're going to a cop 15 years down the road. Now, I agree. I don't care how old you are. You should still be able to get over that wall. You should still be able to squat down, get down, stand up, run upstairs, run downstairs, push, pull. You should be able to get over the wall. You should be able to do all the things that you could do when you were a rookie. Maybe not as efficient, but you should be able to do every single one of those. And I agree. But that is not what the 30 for 30 initiative is talking about. So she's talking about a male 20 years into his career. We're talking about males right now. We're talking about standards right now. Should a cop be able to get over a wall, a police recruit? And the answer is yes. Should a cop be able to, a police recruit, be able to run a mile and a half? They should be able to run way more than a mile and a half. At least they should be able to get over a mile and a half. Listen to I just want to read this chart real quick before I take it down, because I think this is going to infuriate you, Eric. So this is what it says. Research suggests that women officers use less force and less excessive force. Now, we could talk about that for the next 3 days, but let's keep going. They are named in fewer complaints and lawsuits. And all the factors about why they use less force and less excessive force will apply to this as well. Ready for this one? Are perceived by communities as being more honest and compassionate. Wonder how you got that one. C, better outcomes for crime victims, especially in sexual assault cases. And here's my favorite one, Eric. And I think this one's going to be your favorite one. Make fewer discretionary arrests, especially of non-white residents. I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to say it, and let me read it with the title. Research suggests that women officers make fewer discretionary arrests, especially of non-white residents.
You can't make this up. You seriously can't make this up. Now I'm going to tell you this when it comes to that chart. Jack, can you bring that chart back real quick?
Just want to. I got it.
Thank you. So let's stop right there. Let's pretend this was 2 sentences. Makes fewer discretionary arrests. Stop right there. I don't have the data, but I can tell you right now, that is a true answer based on my anecdotal experience. Why? I can tell you right now. Makes fewer discretionary arrests. Discretionary arrests equate to intrusive police work. Now, when we look at anti-crime teams, public safety, neighborhood safety teams, khaki pants, I don't know yet about the Q teams, but we can assume what those teams look like. The overwhelming majority of proactive police teams in law enforcement, especially the NYPD, let's take a hyper focus on the NYPD, are comprised, and even the city wrote about it, right, John? When I was smeared as the most complained cop, they spoke about anti-crime being big, burly men. The overwhelming majority of police officers that do intrusive police work are men. There are some women that do it, but the overwhelming majority. So let's stop right there. I'll say, you know what, Tanya Meisenholder, I agree with you. Women make fewer discretionary arrests because the overwhelming majority of intrusive police work is conducted by men. It takes those masculine traits to intercept and stop the most violent perpetrators. That is the most dangerous type of police work you could do in law enforcement. Anyone active and retired, if you did anti-crime or any form of that type of police work, that is the most dangerous form of police work. I know we hear about car stops, but those 2 seconds when you get out of a car or you stop someone walking and you're about to interject and intercept someone who may have an illegal firearm with nefarious intentions, that is the most dangerous second in your life. I used to tell my cops, that is the last day of your life every time you stop someone who may have a firearm. And it could be. Now let's go on to especially of non-white residents. So this is where I have a problem with her statement. We went off gender, and now we went into racism. So what she's saying, John, is those knuckle draggers. Let's go back to Tanya Meisenholder's interview with a British police officer, where she completely degrades white male police officers, white alpha males, refers to them as knuckle draggers. What is someone that's a knuckle dragger? Someone who's stupid. So this is completely discriminatory. What she's saying is that female police officers are less likely to be racist. That's what she's saying here. That is discriminatory. This is all out discrimination. So somehow she segued gender into racism. This is pure crap. This is trash, John. So that first line, I agree with. And I think I gave you the evidence-based information. We could all see it. We could all make those observations. But to say that that non-white adversaries are arrested less likely by females, well, of course, they're doing less intrusive police work. And I don't know the data, but maybe, and most likely, there are less females in law enforcement working in locations that have a high propensity for violence. If we look at some of the most vile and violent precincts in the city, most likely they're comprised of men. Most likely. So this is absolutely discriminatory statement, John. I am disgusted by that.
So like when I look at this and I'm like, I read that, I'm like, wow. I'm like, is that actually a positive? They make fewer discretionary arrests. What's the job of police officers? They're there to patrol, observe, and get involved. Stop crimes before they happen. The core mission of policing takes place by making discretionary arrests. A discretionary arrest, drug sales, prostitution, sex trafficking, gun violence, distribution of illegal firearms, preventing someone from being shot, gang violence. I mean, you name it. Every horrible crime you could think of, burglary, robbery, rape, those are all combated on the streets of America and throughout the world by police officers every day who are making discretionary arrests that do not come over 911. So I don't understand how that is a positive. It actually, on its face, I could make some assertions about women police officers just from that and actually point to the negative of that statement. But I won't do that because there are many, many, many factors in that. But we're not willing to have real conversations. So women are less likely to make fewer discretionary arrests, especially of non-white residents. So not only are women less likely to partake in the core mission of policing, is what the 30 for 30 initiative is saying is a positive, that they're also less likely to be racist, because I don't understand what that assertion means, non-white residents. I don't understand that at all. So there's several factors going on here, and this is all based upon hypothesis and misrepresentation of facts. Again, let's go back to that: use less force and less excessive force. Women use less force and less excessive force. Yes, but women aren't compromised of the same amount of men. This is not a 50-50 split. So right on the face of that data, the data set fails. The point you made failed. Is our police departments compromised 50% male and 50% female? No. One of the highest one, I think, in the country is the NYPD, which is about 23% female, something along those lines. About 23% of the NYPD is represented by females. So could we sit on the face and say that women in the NYPD use less force and less excessive force? Yes, that's true. But could we point to that and say that that is a fair comparison? No, it's not, because it's not a 50-50 split. If it was a 50-50 split, you could say that now. But does that mean that men are more brutal or men are more aggressive? I'm going to say it'll always point to men are more aggressive, because we know that traditionally. We know that when we look at the comparison of little boys to little girls. It's not a social construct. My friends' sons are maniacs. Their daughters are not. My daughters are calm. Now, do you have some outliers that are little girls that are crazy and running around and they're hopping over things and they're climbing things? Yeah, of course. There's always outliers. But traditionally, when you look at kids on the playground, you look at girls and they're less physical, they're less aggressive than males. So on its face, that whole thing fails. But that one point, when you go back to less to make discretionary arrests and arrest non-white residents, I mean, that shows the agenda here, in my opinion. That shows the racism and the sexism that is occurring. And honestly, I have no problem with people presenting any of these ideas. I have a problem when they're not backed up and they're afraid to have conversations. So let's start to have that conversation. Let's start to hone in on those data points. How many arrests are made by males nationwide? How many arrests are made by males nationwide? That's the data point I want to know. How many violent situations are ended by male police officers?
I think we nailed it right here. The bottom line is that the information provided in this article by Dr. Tanya Meisenholder, excuse me, is complete conjecture. It's all opinionated, and it's actually opinionated with discrimination. It's meant to drive the reader to a specific, narrow, related determination. The goal of this article is to drive the reader and put you in this box. And here's the box. Women are more effective, and women are less racist. White alpha males are ineffective, they're stupid, and they're racist. We can cut it and slice it. It's that simple. Completely by conjecture. And absolutely, I think I provided the information to debunk this article in the sense that, yes, men are more likely to use force in discretionary arrests. And I consider discretionary arrest intrusive police work. And in law enforcement, particularly when we talk about the NYPD, when we look at intrusive police units, anti-crime, and all these units, they're comprised of men. And they're facing the most violent perpetrators, and those men have to operate with aggressive and assertive control. I used to say there's a fine line, there's a difference. There's aggressive control and there's out of control. And if you're doing intrusive police work, you're doing anti-crime, public safety, any of these type of units, and you're out there doing discretionary arrest, and you're doing intrusive police work, well, you better go out there aggressive, and you better go out there aggressive control, because you have to go home, and you have to bring not only yourself safe home, but the ultimate goal is to bring that violent perpetrator into custody safely as well. And how do you do that? With aggressive control. And not only that, when we look at the NYPD, and we say the NYPD because Dr. Tanya Meisenholder was the deputy commissioner for EEO. When you look at the NYPD, it's very easy to see that male police officers are using more force. It's self-documented. If you're in an anti-crime unit or public safety and you're out there seeking illegal firearms, it's more likely that you're going to engage in situations that need and apply force. And the outcome and the byproduct is a threat resistance injury report. So you're documenting that force because you're more likely to use force. So you're self-initiating, that force is documented. You're more likely to receive a civilian complaint, hence my career, because you're engaged in the most violent perpetrators, and that is their only weapon to combat their arrest, along with their defense attorney. And you're more likely to face civil litigation. And you're more likely to work in areas that have a high propensity of violence to stop the most violent perpetrators. So I think that we laid out some of the ingredients that really expose the differences that Tanya Meisenholder has not presented by any evidence or by any study other than her opinion to drive a particular agenda.
Yeah, so let's listen to some of Tanya Meisenholder's opinions. So yeah, Jack, if you could if you could play this, let's listen to what Tanya Meisenholder's opinions of male police officers are.
Thing that sounds very philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine some kind of knuckle draggers with 30 years in the job. Probably it sounds all a bit warm and fuzzy, right?
We have some employees who very much understand what we do, why we do it, why it's important. And then we have resistors who want nothing to do with it and don't understand why we have an office like this and then YPD.
Well, Jack Maple, who's a famed detective from this very police department, once wrote that sort of 10% of the department at any time is actively seeking to undermine any good thing that you want to try and do.
I would raise it above 10% if I was asked that question.
Well, and it probably increases dramatically based on how new and innovative or just different each initiative is, right?
For sure. And then if you think about generational issues, as you indicated, or gender issues, when you talk about creating a safe space where employees feel like they belong, that doesn't necessarily resonate with the police officer on the street who's responding to calls for service on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people who get out into the districts, get out into the precincts, and that's where they spend their career.
That's right.
But I wonder sometimes if they're a little oblivious to see the change in the new police officers that are coming on board, because it's a very different generation.
I couldn't agree more. I think the folks that are coming in now have different values, different motivations, different desires from what they expect a career in law enforcement. And I think it's a challenge for those that have been around for a long time to recognize that and to think about what that means and why it's important.
But it used to be a badge of honor, didn't it? Once you have like double-digit years, you got 10, 15 years in, it's fairly standard to say, well, this is shit, but it's always been that way, and this is what you've got to put up with.
That's right.
But what you're actually trying to do is to kind of create the organization that's more supportive, especially, I'm guessing, for younger officers.
For younger officers, for women,
Yeah.
for the LGBTQ employees, any number of people who are coming on this job with different perspectives, different life experiences, and want different things from the job. There is resistance from people that have been around for some time, and dealing with that is complicated, and sometimes you just have to go around those folks.
Yeah, that's a hard.
Sometimes you just have to go around those folks, Eric, because they have different values than the newer generation. We don't know what those values are, right? That's all. This is all opinion based. This is all, like you said, like this sounds great. We're just sipping our little cognac, sitting around the armchair, smoking a pipe. Those knuckles draggers, huh? And she's like, yes. There's way more than 10%. Yeah. She was talking about mainly she wasn't talking about, and you're right, Rob, she wasn't talking about her husband who's an SDS and BMS, who probably, if I had to guess, I've never seen his arrest record, but if I had to guess, if I looked at his arrest record, I'm going to say that he was less likely to partake in proactive policing and lock up non-white residents as well, too. But don't worry, he made SDS anyway. Just all good the same.
Is her husband a knuckle dragger? I'd like to know.
No. He has different values than you, Eric. He has much different values. Do we just lose Eric again? We did. We lost Eric. But yeah, so this is what the 30 for 30 initiative is. It's based around opinion. It's based around conjecture. They're giving you stats, but they're not backing up their claims. And their claims make no sense. It's like, oh yeah, here you go. Less likely to use force. Better at de-escalation. How'd you get to those? What's the data show, and how did you arrive to that fact? Sorry, Eric, we lost you.
Yeah, you lost me because I'm a knuckle dragger. I can't figure out my stomach. Again, I go back to it that it's all conjecture. It's all opinion. She doesn't provide any facts. Now, to me, that's a big word, John, to say that they have better values. What do you mean by values? Are we talking about religious values? Because those religious values were not honored during the vaccine mandate. What values are we talking about? The way that we view life? Because in this watch party that we did on a prior episode of Tanya Meisenholder, in this interview with this British snubby, stupid police officer, these two want to pretend they're so smart that they're dumb. They're so academic that they're dumb, that they no longer can make common sense because they can't make common sense because they think they're smarter than everybody else. And they want to project their intelligence to make you feel stupid and lie to you and gaslight you and try to tell you that women are more effective in this manner, that we need people that are LGBTQ because they have better values. I don't understand how anyone's sexual orientation plays a role in your ability to be an effective law enforcement officer. John, I'm sure the same thing. You've never worked with someone and said, you know what? We're going to go out and do work today. I would like to know who you slept with last night because that makes a difference on how we do our job today. What's your values? Oh, you slept with a man last night? Oh, we're good.
Are you into any weird stuff?
Right. We need to know what you do in the bedroom so that we know how effective you're going to be. Right? Because if you play with toys, you might be aggressive out there. This is absolute ridiculous. Complete opinion. It doesn't even make sense. What are these values? What are these values that she's talking about? Isn't it something that gets weeded out during your psych interview when you get on the job in the police academy to determine that you're someone that has common sense? The penal law in itself, the New York State penal law, says that it's a police officer makes a determination based on reasonable standards using common sense. That's what the front page of the penal law says. All you need is reasonable standards and common sense. But now, where's the common sense? I've never looked over at my partner and been like, hey, even if it's a female. So what did you do with your husband last night? I need to know because that's going to make a difference in how well you do your job today. Oh, I'm sorry, you're straight. I have a problem with that. You have a girlfriend. Okay, well, good now. You're going to be a better police officer. You have better values. This is absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That interview was trash. Absolute trash. And she's an academic. You know what? I'd rather associate people that have far less degrees than she has.
No, yeah. The values are different. You know, the values are different because they're less likely to go to church. They're less likely to believe in God. They're less likely to work out. They're less likely to be able to run a mile and a half. They're less likely to get over a wall. They're less likely to not be taking psychotic medications. You know, they're less likely, so the values are much different because, those guys that went to church and weren't on psychotic meds and could jump over a wall and could run a mile and a half and weren't afraid to put their life in danger to step in the way of anything that came over that 911 call or even things that didn't come over the radio and initiate in proactive police work. Those people have different values because they're knuckle draggers. But believe me, this is not just an anti-male agenda. It's not just that. It's an anti-religion agenda. It's also an anti-white agenda. And you've seen it with that little snippet. Let's just hear a little bit more of Tanya Meisenholder and her thoughts. And like, I'm not picking on Tanya Meisenholder. This is the academia mind when we surround the 30 for 30 initiative. There are plenty of males, police officers, and there are plenty of males who are listening to this currently who are attached to this 30 for 30 initiative. If you read the article in Police One, and then there's links to the 30-30, and you look, you'll see a lot of guys that were aligned with the NYPD that have tied themselves onto this. None of them will come on here and have this conversation about it, but they're welcome to in a respectful manner, and we'll treat them respectfully, even though I feel like we're not as men, as white males. I feel like we have not been given that same respect, and you're going to hear that right now. So let's see how we feel about white males and police.
Just giving people a seat at the big table is a huge step.
That's right. When we talk about diversity, first, we often talk about it in terms of race and gender, which is fine. That's important. But then you think about all of the other ways that we differ in terms of sexual orientation, religion, life experience, everything that goes into the diversity. But a lot of the diversity in the NYPD is in the lower ranks. And so when you look up,
it starts to become a bit pale-male and stale, does it?
It does. And I've said this to the police commissioner. While we may be a diverse organization, we have a long way to go in terms of being an inclusive organization.
Just giving people a seat at the big table is a huge step.
That's right. When we talk about diversity, first, we often talk about it in terms of race and gender, which is fine. That's important. But then you think about all of the other ways that we differ in terms of sexual orientation, religion, life experience, everything that goes into the diversity. But a lot of the diversity in the NYPD is in the lower ranks. And so when you look up,
it starts to become a bit pale male and stale, does it?
it does.
Right, that's good. Take it down. Take it down. That's good.
That's not racist. Pale, male, and stale. You know what pale means, right? White. But let's go back to when she talks about sexual orientation. Oh boy, I don't get this one at all. So hold on a minute. Imagine for our active or retired police officers, you're a brand new police officer. You're a rookie. You go into a job with other rookies. Get to a location and you go, "Oh man, do we have everything we need? I got my gun. I got my belt. I got my cuffs. I got my cuff key. For some, I got my whistle. But hold on a minute. Wait a minute. We don't have any gay police officers. Oh, we're screwed. Anybody gay here? No? Oh, man. How are we going to handle this job? Who do you have sex with? I need to know. This is going to make a difference on how we handle this job. Is this crazy what's going on here? I must be a total knuckle dragger. I must be one of those outdated people because me, I could care less. I don't care if you slept with a donkey the night before. I don't care what you did. I want to know, do you have the tools on your belt? Do you look like you could do the job? Do you have it up here? What are your values? I want to know your values are that you are willing to go through that door with me. Are you willing to take down a violent perpetrator? Are you willing to save someone's life? Are you willing to be a police officer? That's what I want to know. I could care less who you were with the night before. This is ridiculous. I must be a knuckle dragger. So are you, John.
I mean, and the thing is, like, so the Trump administration is pulling down DEI federally, but locally, diversity, equity, and inclusion is running rampant, and it's based on a racist, sexist ideology. It's based on that white males control everything, and it's 100% not the case in New York City, and it hasn't been for years, but we pretend like it is. Eric Adams pretended forever that white supremacy was the biggest problem in New York City. He'll probably still tell you that. That's what he said when he initially came into office. He'll probably still tell you that. But the mindset's there, and you hear it when you hear the too male, the too pale, and the too stale, and it rings in my head. Jack, play the clip. Where did we hear that? I've heard that before. Where did we hear too male, too pale, too stale before?
Stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male, too pale, and too stale. And we will not go away silently. We will not be silent and stand up to an administration.
All right, take it down. Take it down. I don't want to see that anymore. And
John,
when Scott Stringer standing there smiling, he's like, "I'm talking about you, Scott."
You gotta laugh at the white men in the crowd. Hey, right? Yeah.
Scott Stringer's running for mayor too, by the way.
I ain't gonna lie, that was a little catchy. Too male, too pale.
But is that not what this is based off of? It's this ideology that we need to bring down, we need to bring down the patriarchy. This is what the 30 for 30 initiative is. That's what it is. The white male patriarchy. It's not just males here, people.
But that's why I was saying early on, this, unfortunately, is not something that's hyper-focused on New York. This is a globalist idea. This is going on in the entire world. It's not even just America. This is going on in the entire world. This globalist idea to push women to just soften the entire world. We're going to be completely eradicated, and we're going to be so soft and so weak that everything's going to turn over into artificial intelligence. That's what this is about. Let's push gender. Let's push race and turn this whole thing over to artificial intelligence. I mean, if you look at the Roman Empire, when they started to push this whole gender ideology also in the Roman Empire, and everything became, men and women, women and men, and they were all sleeping with each other, that was the downfall of the Roman Empire. So this could be our downfall also. It's amazing how, history repeats itself. The only difference now is Dr. Tanya Meisenholder has an academic degree to go along with it. And you know what? She has 0 police experience and 0 life experience. As far as I'm concerned, she's so smart, she's stupid.
Yeah, it's It's really frustrating, man. It's frustrating to hear this. It's frustrating that it's still going on. It's frustrating that police organizations like Police One aren't pushing back at this, and they're allowing this information to get out that will it will detract into low information people spewing the same thing. Professions, too male, too pale, too stale, right? The upper echelons, too male, too pale, too stale, right? That's Tanya Meisenholder said it. The British dude said it, right? Too male, too pale, too stale. So it's okay to be racist. It's okay to be sexist as long as we're doing it against whites and males. That's, to me, the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda. It conflicts directly with equal opportunity. And when we start to push numbers 30 for 30, I'm sitting here and I'm saying it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, another thing, if you go back in that Reducing Crime podcast, and I highly recommend you listen to the whole thing. It's infuriating. Do it while you're working out. Yeah, and you'll laugh too at the same time. But it's infuriating. One of the things that she talks about in there is she talks about how Asian women traditionally don't want to be police officers. And that's an issue in the NYPD. And that's what she was focusing on. And I'm sitting there and going, well, if they traditionally, you can't even get people to take the job who traditionally become police officers. What are you focusing on an ethnicity that traditionally doesn't want to be police officers? What's wrong with them not wanting to be police officers? And then they go into the whole, well, women have kids. And that is exactly why they tend to stay away from shift work and policing, because it's an arduous profession that men traditionally take the role. Doesn't always necessarily mean that that's the case, but traditionally, that's what it is. And I truly believe if we really study the numbers, if we really, really deep down, like, why are these things? Why this? Why are it X amount of women in policing versus men? I think if we actually gave a broad analysis, looking at like a psychoanalysis of the male psyche versus the female psyche, if we look at that when we take it into making arrests, when we take it into complaints, if we really looked at that, I'm going to tell you that all of those numbers, they're not showing sexism and racism against women or minorities. They're showing completely organic numbers based upon society.
No doubt about it. It's organic. It's biological. It's nature. It's nurture. It's natural. I've worked with numerous walks of life, and I've seen women that were great police officers, and I've seen the hurdles that they had to go through when they were bearing children. I seen the difficulties women had. That's why I have a problem with rumors I hear that Kaz Daughtry has his security detail pick him up so that he could take his kids to school on job time and then get to work. I have a problem with that because I've watched good female police officers that bear children, and they would tell me they would have to spend 2 hours before work, pumping their breast so that they can have milk for their kids, and then have to take their kids to school or drop them off at whatever daycare, and then get to work. So if that's, and they had to get to work on time, and they didn't have a security detail picking them up. So that's a major hurdle for a woman, and I would think, we talk about superpowers. I always talk about superpowers, right? That's a superpower that women have that men don't have, and that's bearing children. And that's a superpower they should be proud of, and we should all be proud of that. We all have wives, girlfriends, mothers, sisters, and we're proud of that. That's what keeps the world going. So it's going to be a hurdle, and it's going to be a less dominant female profession, because most females, at least from the women I've known in my life, that is the biggest goal in life, is to be a mother. And that's going to take away from that profession. It's a very difficult thing when you have a child in the first year or second year, and if you're pumping breast milk and you have to spend your time pumping milk and dropping your kids off and doing police work, and while you're wearing that uniform, stop the pump where they have those pumping locations now. That's a lot of work for a woman. So there's plenty of women who say, you know what, I'd rather just be home. I'll take a leave of absence, or I'll leave the profession altogether because it's just too much work to balance both. And I think for most women, I think it would be more of a proud moment that they would enjoy being home and being a mother. So, of course, and that's biological. That's biological. That's nothing to do. But Tanya Meisenholder wants to use her academia to twist this thing and make this ideology that we're discriminating against women, when in reality, this whole thing is discriminating against white alpha males. That's what this whole gender discrimination. I was a pawn in that also. I was discriminated. I was a racial pawn when it came to the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I was the devil with the white, with the white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes, which is why I was attacked by an overzealous Civilian Complaint Review Board. And, referred to as being racist in my administrative trial. When I worked in the South Bronx, that was comprised of 99% minorities, 99% black and brown. Who is going to be my adversary? Who am I going to arrest? So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Patrick Jordan said, it's been my experience that police administrators prioritize mothers who are cops over fathers. I have actually experienced this type of discrimination. Well, welcome to being a male in policing, Chief Jordan, because I think every single father has experienced that same thing, right? It doesn't matter that we need to help out in the household with the children. Doesn't matter if we may have kids with special needs. No. We're the rock, right? It's easy for us. We don't get time off to take our kids to the doctors. We don't get time off when our wives have children. I told the story often that I had a kid, and I wasn't really fond of him. I didn't think he was a great cop at all. I thought he could have been a good, and I think he did get a lot better. But like at the time when it happened, he wasn't really my cup of tea. Didn't really love him. We were having a little friction. We're about the same age, just sergeant, and I didn't think he exhibited what a police officer should be. And I didn't think he partook in the core mission of policing. And I think he was looking to scam more than he was looking to be a cop. So I used to ride him a little bit when I was on patrol, just to make sure he was doing the right thing. I'm never brutal. I'm not an authoritarian, but I want people to do their job. And I personally believe if you let the scammers get away with things, you ultimately hurt the people that are working. So everybody needs to get brought up. And he did do that later on. But at the time, I was not fond of this kid. And his wife, he had 3 kids, and his wife just had another kid. But this time she had a C-section, so she was out. So she has 3 little kids, and she just had a C-section. He got approved for having 2 weeks off of his own time. We didn't give him any time, right? Males, even though federally we're entitled to maternity or paternity, whatever you want to call it, we weren't allowed to get it in the NYPD. I think that has since changed, but at that time he couldn't. So he had 2 weeks approved off. 4 days after his wife gives birth, a C-section. He's taking care of the kids. He's got his wife in the hospital, and I'm getting told, you got to get him back to work. I'm like, are you kidding me? His wife just had a C-section. He's got little kids. They're like, you better get him back to work. I'm like, oh, okay. I text him. I said, they're looking for you. Don't pick up your phone. I said, I never called you. I never text you. You never got in contact with me. Stay home with your wife. You have the approved time off, right? For days, I was getting ridden. Where is he? I need him back. I'm like, he's with a sick wife. I'm not going to his house. It is what it is. He's got the approved time off. We'll figure it out. Call the borough. Tell them we're short people. And I was like, I can't believe this. Like if it was a female, it would be whatever. We'll do anything. Don't worry about it. We'll just make John work. We'll just make John work for 3 weeks with no days off. We'll just make him work all the time. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You do whatever you got to do. And honestly, we should take care of each other. I'm not knocking that we should take care of mothers, but I mean, we definitely prioritize mothers over fathers. And so I think we prioritize females over men. And, I don't think we get the same respect back. And I think that's because traditionally, I believe we understand that the profession's arduous and we understand the vocation that we're taking. And it's like, yeah, this is my life. I signed up for this. This is what we chose. I would always tell everybody, this is the life you chose. This is what it is. Don't cry to me about it. This is the life you chose. This is what it is. This is what we do.
So now when we talk about discrimination, we talk about different gender roles, and we talk about sexual orientation. So I don't agree with discussing gender as a form of employment. But and I don't agree with the ethnicity, right? Oh, we know we need male whites or male black, or we need Hispanic females. I don't get it, but at least we can actually chop up these conversations and dissect it and see different point of views. We can understand root causes. But I don't get it at all. When we talk about sexual orientation, how does sexual orientation play a role at all in inclusion? When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I don't understand how Tanya Meisenholder talks about sexual orientation. Now, I understand there's an LGBTQ to protect those police officers from ridicule, protect them, make sure that they're treated fairly, that they're not discriminated against, that there's no hatred because of the sexual orientation. But how does targeting specific types of people with different forms of sexual orientation make it inclusive and make it a better police department and make it better values? How does sexual orientation play a role at all in identifying and choosing effective police officers? I can understand, hey, we have a 5'9" female, great physical fitness, has leadership attributes, has a great eye, has a great ability to have conversations, has life experience. These are great. Does it matter if she goes home to a woman or goes home to a man or goes home to a donkey? I don't understand. What does that play a role in her effectiveness on doing police work? What are your thoughts on this whole idea of bringing up sexual orientation for inclusion by Dr. Tanya Meisenholder when it comes to police work?
It's a non-factor, and it just relates that this is an agenda. It's a diversity, equity, inclusion agenda that discriminates against males, particularly white males. And when you drive down further, straight white males. When you drive down further, straight white males of faith. The whole thing is based on opinion. I don't believe there's any strong structure in it whatsoever. So listen to this line in the article. There's clear evidence about why women don't join policing. And for some, it's because they can't see themselves in this male-dominated field. Perhaps there's some concern that they won't be able to make the cut in terms of physical standards or other job requirements of the job. Work-life balance is another factor. Policing is not for everyone. When you think about the demands of the job, shift work, high stress, and the potential danger, all of these different aspects impact the interest and decision-making process for women. Why they don't impact the male, I think they do. There are a lot of women who don't see policing as a viable career. Also, you can't discount the friends and family phenomenon. Do you want your daughter to be a police officer? Is that a field you would want your wife or whoever to be a part of? One thing about the 30 for 30 is we are about making sure that there are qualified applicants. In a time of staffing challenges, you might have an untapped pool of people you haven't considered or targeted. That could be a really good fit for policing and bring a unique value to policing, but they may not be aware of the opportunities, and the agencies may not be aware what they can offer. So when you look at that, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, no, I don't want my daughter to be a cop. I don't want my son to be a cop. I don't want my wife to be a cop. I don't want my nephew to be a cop. And you're going to sit there and say that this is somehow a social construct of why women don't see policing as a viable career. My wife makes fun of me all the time. I would never do that job. You pick that job? Who the hell would do that job? Why would you want to do that job? And I'm like sitting there and I was like, yeah, she's right. I was like, why the hell did I pick that job?
Well, here's the bottom line. Let's talk about biology. Let's talk about the reality of life. I would hope John, I would hope that when you're out with your wife, that you're the dominant figure when it comes to protection. That your wife leans on you and your children lean on you for protection for your family. I know it's the same for me. I know. I think my wife would divorce me tomorrow if I leaned on her for protection, and my kids looked at my wife like, "Are you going to protect us?" My kids know when we go out, oh, we're safe, right? Daddy's here. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I don't expect. Listen, I can't have children. I say my kids don't look at me and say, "Hey, you know what? We want another kid. Can you have a kid?" What is wrong with talking about biology? What's talking about human nature? There's nothing wrong with it. Now, don't get me wrong. And I said there is a place for women in law enforcement. I worked with plenty of women who were fantastic. But those women I worked with them because they faced reality. They knew their limitations. They knew their capabilities. And we had those discussions working together. If we're in a violent situation, we would have tactics. What's tactics? It's just a plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I expect you to do, right? And you would work together. I don't expect a female police officer. There are some outliers, to get into an all-out physical confrontation for someone who's 6'5". I've been training martial arts my whole life, and someone who's 6'5", a big dude, that's going to be a problem for me too. So why do I expect some woman to handle it? And I have more physical attributes than she does, the overwhelming majority. I mean, most men are that's a daunting task. So what is wrong with actually saying, hey, this 6'5" male white police officer has the capabilities of making discretionary arrest far more than this 5'4" female police officer. What is wrong with saying that? That 6'5" police officer, just on the physical attributes, has more attributes than I do. I used to laugh. I used to tell some of the, I would always stay in shape, take care of myself, train. But I would see some of these guys that were, giant, 6'4", built like brick shit houses. John, what I'm talking about. Some of them they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. They've been going their whole life because they're just big guys. And I said, man, if I had your body, you know what I would do with that? So there's nothing wrong with talking about biology and talking about attributes. But of course, the academics want to turn this whole thing around. This 30 by 30 thing, if you don't dive into it, it sounds great. Let's get more women. Let's be more inclusive. But we start getting to sexual orientation. We start getting to discrimination. The whole thing is just targeted to discrimination against white alpha males. And John, I'm going to add what you said. Straight alpha white males. Basically what they're tired of. They don't want to see Eric Dim walking with a wife. They don't want to see John McCarry walking with a wife. That makes us less effective. So you know what? Let's get rid of all these straight white males. You know how we can do it? With a mandate. Let's get a mandate. That gets rid of these guys. Say goodbye to them. They don't have any values. They believe in Christianity. Most of those guys, they're Christian. They're white. Get rid of them.
So you heard it here why Eric's the most complained cop. Not only is he sexist, but he's too male, he's too pale, and he's too stale. They just proved everything that they said in the 30 for 30. That's why he's the most complained cop. We just
can't prove it.
Well, listen, but
too straight.
Like, I'm joking, but this is the ideology, right? So listen to this. Listen to this part. Okay, so if I'm a police chief or the head of personnel in a large agency, why do I want women in my department? What's the added value they bring? All right, let's see the answer. Ready? Part of it involves diversity of thought and perspective and ensuring that everyone is represented in your agency. We need to talk about the value of diversity, such as your community and what it looks like. All communities are different. So I don't think it's easy as saying 50% of the population is women, therefore 50% of policing must be women. But research does indicate that women use less force. They are better at de-escalation. They're better at communicating with victims, especially victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. They cost the agency less in terms of complaint. I think it centers on women's communication skills. They tend to be more empathetic and compassionate and focused on providing that protective factor versus the us versus them mentality. Like Eric just clearly laid out he has.
So again, somehow they took all this gender and they cut this whole thing into racism. So knuckle draggers, white alpha males have this us and them mentality, but women don't. Where's your data? Where's your data? Women are more empathetic. Where's your data? Women are less likely to engage. Where's your data? Where is the study? Other than Dr. Tanya Meisenholder telling us that. Where's your study? Where in the policing project, right? Isn't she the director of the policing project? Where was the study? I want to see the study. Until you have that study, this is trash.
So listen to this. This follows up on that. Of course, I recognize some of these are select studies in specific locations. Oh, like almost like they're not even studies at all. They're just opinion-based garbage. And that there is more research to be done. But policing has evolved over the past few decades. We've evolved. There used to be knuckle draggers in policing, but now they've evolved into more men who wear Birkenstocks and have very skinny arms. We know that the use of force is far less acceptable than it used to be. Why wouldn't we want to put people at the table who tend to use less force and de-escalate? We're not saying men cannot de-escalate. What we're saying is women are uniquely beneficial in that way.
You gotta laugh at this article. So again, it goes back to what we've been saying. There is no data. There needs to be more research. Could you imagine, John? We have absolutely no research, and every time we get on the podcast, but listen, this is what police work should look like. Here's how you get an illegal firearm off the street. Great. What's your research? What experience do you have? None. I just, this is what I think. This is what I think should happen. You have no idea. She has no idea. I see men, especially men that are former correctional officers, come on the police department, and they can de-escalate anybody. They can de-escalate a lion. These guys were unbelievable. She has no idea what she's talking about. She has zero idea of police work. It's all conjecture. There's no actual data. She can't show us the data. Show us the literature. When you say you need to do more research, you haven't done any research.
I mean, I think like this is the equivalent to me if we started the 100 for 100 initiative, and it's like, yeah, we're just gonna have only men in policing because they bench more, bro. They do more push-ups. They do more squats. They're better at de-escalation. They're better at everything. It's literally the equivalent of that. The same. Like we could just, you know what? We should do that. We should just make the exact thing with all the same, and just watch us get torn apart. Oh my God, they're so sexist. They're so racist. And like, yeah, you know what? And the white cops is better too.
And they better be straight. We're gonna have. That's it. We're gonna have all straight white males that can bench 350.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. It's the stupid like they sound like that. Like this is again. These are all studies that are funded by like high academia, but that's literally like their arguments are completely sexist and racist and dumb, and they don't even make sense. Why wouldn't you want people at the table that de-escalate and better and make less complaints? It's like there are a lot of factors on why that is. And no, they do not de-escalate better. That is that cannot even be proven. That is not even proven. Are they less likely to use force? Yes. Does that mean that it's a good thing? No. Because you know what? Like Eric said, they're more likely to use deadly force.
First of all, that's what she's saying. That's who the knuckle draggers are. We're going to bench 350.
400, bro.
Listen, I worked with police officers that I had no idea. They were great. I had no idea they were gay. Now, thinking back, I should have said, oh, now I know why you're so good. You're gay. If I would have known you're gay, I would have asked you to be on my team. I had no idea. That's why you were so good. Oh, I should have been asking people, hold on a minute. You know what, John, going back, I used to do interviews, and I will tell you right now, there's this thing in the police department, and you know it, that when they put out a posting for anti-crime, it's considered that you already know who's going to the team. I didn't run it like that at all. I actually conducted real interviews, and I would find people that people never even thought about. But in those interviews, the kind of questions I would ask is, their experiences. I would try to determine their capabilities. But I think I made a mistake now. I never asked who they sleep with at night. I should have. Wait a minute. You sleep with a donkey? Oh, you're on the team. You're good to go. I would want to know their physical fitness capabilities, their ability to do crime analysis, their ability, their eye. Do they have do they understand behavioral indicators? I didn't care if they were pale, male, stale. I didn't care if they were women. I didn't care what they looked like. I want to know if they could do the job. But apparently, I didn't ask the right questions, because if it was Dr. Meisenholder, she would want to know what's your religion, right? Because that's about values. She would want to know the color of your skin, who you sleep with, who you love, how you think, what you look like. Are you a woman? Are you a man? So it's funny how she was the deputy commissioner for OEO. These are the people you make complaints to? OEO that actually are discriminating. They're actually violating their own OEO policy. Wow.
So it's positive discrimination, Eric. You're just not looking at it correctly. This is just, it's good to discriminate against certain people, Billy Blastoff said, how many cops can bench press their own body weight in 2025? I mean, I can't tell you, I can't give you a statistic nationwide. I will say it's probably going to be low. It'll be higher in some departments, especially when you get to like state troopers or cops that work alone. I think when you look at that, cops that bench their own body weight will be a lot higher. But partner-driven departments in the NYPD who could bench their own body weight without having any data, I'm going to say 1 to 3%. 1 to 3% of the NYPD could bench their own body weight. How many could do 10 pull-ups? I don't less than 1%. How many could do 50 push-ups? Less than 1%. Sad state of facts. And then when we look at that, when we look at the gender roles, right? Obviously women traditionally have less upper body strength than men. But that does have nothing to do with a 1.5 mile run, and has nothing to do with maybe they could get a less time on the 1.5 mile run, but it has nothing to do with doing push-ups, doing squats. Plenty of women that could run me into the ground right now within 5 minutes. I'll be on the floor throwing up, and they'll be, and when we look at cardiovascular strength and things like that. So yeah, it's sad state of affairs. So in my opinion, the 30 for 30 is the continued emasculation of law enforcement in America. It's continuation of really getting males out of policing. It's not about empowering women, like they said. It's exactly that. It's positive discrimination. In their opinion, it's good to discriminate. And the people that tied on to this, I think it makes me laugh the most. So listen to this. Listen to this. So this is funny, and this relates into modern day NYPD so much. These last 3 paragraphs. Unfortunately, policing is known as excuse me. Policing is known as an occupation where sexual harassment is rampant, and there's data to back that up. There's plenty of data in the NYPD. We've done some surveys with women across the United States, and a very high percentage have said they experience sexual harassment in the workplace. Part of the challenge is the definition. What does sexual harassment entail? More work needs to be done. But to answer your question, I think it does impact recruitment efforts. When women think about a law enforcement career, it's something that comes up. It also could impact a woman's decision to choose between one agency and another. If you have a number of police departments in your immediate area and you're doing research and consider how that agency represents itself and what's their stance on women in policing, I don't think we have a good answer to solving the sexual harassment challenge. But that topic's for me and you to continue to delve into. So when you look at that, I mean, that's a fair assessment. When you're having best dressed female parties with $700 women, when you approve an Ash for Cash program or on duty booty that only women could partake in, right? You couldn't get that. You couldn't get that overtime. I couldn't get that overtime. You couldn't get that $700 in that best dressed. I think Yeah, obviously there's a problem in policing, but it's funny, like all predators, the people who push this initiatives like this are the people that are sexually harassing women. And it's like, no, you're the scumbag that we need to get out of policing. You're the male they're talking about, but you're the one who refuses to push back on this gender and race discrimination. Why? Because you're a predator and you're too busy sexually harassing all the women, pretending like you care about them.
Before I go into that, I don't want to get off topic, but I want to answer this question later on. Jonathan Fredericks, $4.99 coffee and donuts. He says, do you think much like LAPD and the FBI and the NYPD should have yearly physical tests to keep their jobs? I think it's a great question. Let's answer that later on. We'll remember it. I want to continue on with this, but great question, Jonathan Fredericks. I appreciate it. Thank you for the coffee and donuts. John, that's a great point, particularly with the NYPD. And I'm sure other law enforcement agencies have the same problem. But when we talk about the NYPD, there's an excessive amount of sexual allegations, and we see it. It's right now. It's in the public eye. What's going on in the upper echelon of the police department? So I find it actually irresponsible by Dr. Tanya Meisenholder. She's trying to push 30 for 30. So she's saying, let's put more females into a law enforcement profession that has an issue with sexual harassment. If that's really the problem, why don't you work on fixing the problem? And then we try to get more females in this profession. So what you're saying is, let's put more females in this profession and let's have more cases of sexual harassment. Why don't we fix this problem first before you push more females into this profession? So, yeah, of course it's going to be, first of all, right now, no one wants to become a police officer. It's not a viable profession. But seeing the amount of issues with sexual allegations, sexual retaliation at the upper echelon, especially with the NYPD, why would it be a viable option for a female at this point? A smart female that with her head on the shoulder say, I don't want to take part in this type of organization. Why would I want to put myself in that situation? So those are issues that should be fixed before you push more females into this profession.
Yeah, 100%. But let's answer the question though. Should they have physical standards in the NYPD? Do you think that much of the FBI, the NYPD should have yearly physical tests to keep their job? So as it stands right now, if you implemented yearly physical PT tests, even at like a very mediocre level, like a beginner level fitness, you would lose about 75% of the job. So you would, but true, dude. Like I'm not joking. You would lose 70.
That's a high number.
You would lose about 75% of the job right off the bat. So it's not something that could be done right away. You would need to implement like a 5-year plan. And even then, the lack of ability to recruit, I think it would help. I think it would improve morale overall. And I think it would help a little bit. I think it would help to have some type of standard. But even then, I would keep that standard fairly low. But you should be able to walk up and down stairs. You should be able to run about a mile. Your times wouldn't be whatever. You should be able to do a couple of push-ups, maybe one pull-up. I wouldn't make the standards crazy, but there should be some type of standard. And having no standard, it's abysmal. It's honestly abysmal. And when you have no physical fitness standard, but yet you're going to say, we're going back old school, and you're going to take care of a uniform, you don't take care of your body. How are you taking care of your uniform? You think the guy that does not take care of his body is taking care of his uniform? You think the guy that doesn't take care of his body has good hygiene? I'm sorry. It's a thing. It's everything relates. Everything relates. So should there be standards? I think so.
So Richard Kentef makes a great comment here. He says, if you do a 20 or 30 year career in the U.S. military, you have to pass a physical fitness test every year. So now when I agree. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I had some first sergeants, staff sergeants that were older. I had this first sergeant that was way into his 50s, and he could run a 3-mile run better than I can. He actually, unfortunately, he just passed recently. His name was Sergeant Major Chinchetta. Yeah, eventually rose to the rank of Sergeant Major. He was so impressive. May he rest his soul, fellow Marine. He was so impressive. He was in his 50s. He was running circles around all of us. He was a phenomenon. Now, I do think there should be standards, right? I do think that there should be a physical yearly test. And I believe also, if I was police commissioner or something like that, I believe there should be a tiered system. And there should be a tiered system to incentivize police officers. And when I say a tiered system, there should be a physical fitness test. And if you get the highest, there should be brackets. If you get the highest score, you can get so many points towards a promotion or so many points towards getting into another unit. If you're in a second tier, you could get so many points. If you're in a third tier, which would be just passing, well, you get to continue on with your profession and pass your evaluation. I believe if you fail a physical fitness test, you shouldn't be immediately terminated. You should be put on a 6-month review. And they should say, okay, you failed. You have 6 months to get yourself where you need to be. And then after those 6 months, there would then be a review board to determine if you continue on with your employment or not. And the reason why, and their studies shown that if your organization, particularly in law enforcement, if they're actually keeping up with their physical fitness in life, they're less likely to get sick. So they're less likely to be not present from work. They're less likely to get injured. So they're less likely to be out line of duty injury while at work. And they actually, it correlates to their mental apparatus, your physical fitness and your mental apparatus. And just as you said, physical fitness, your health is usually better. So I do believe the standards should be different. If you're a male in your 50s, the standards should be far different than someone who's a male in their 20s or a female in their 20s. And I think the Marine Corps got it right. In the Marine Corps, men have to do, if you do 20 pull-ups, that's a perfect score. And women in the Marine Corps don't do pull-ups because they did a study. They said in the Marine Corps that women's chest bone is built differently. And it's actually very difficult for them to do pull-ups. So instead of making the standards lower, what they did is they made the standards high, but a different exercise. So the women do what's called a flex hang. So they have to hold themselves above the bar for usually about 2 minutes. And if you're a man, try that. Try to hold yourself above the bar for 2 minutes. It's extremely difficult. If anything, the women were actually better at it because of the way the body is structured and built. So there should be standards, but the standards should be different. We should maximize the standards for a man in his 40s of what we think they should be able to do, and we should maximize the standards for a female, let's say a female in her 20s, of what she can do. Again, knowing your limitations and knowing your capabilities. So, Richard Kent, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Patrick Jordan gives this interesting note. He says, on the LA County Sheriff's Department, we had 19% females. We provided security at LA County courts. It is a division with primarily weekends and holidays off. The staff was more than 50% women. Social construct. No. Social construct, women wanted to do that detail, And I don't know if there's an ism for people that don't work out, like racist against different colors, or there's ism against, people who are out of shape. But Eric just clearly displayed that as well. So, you're hearing all of our biases come out. So,
old male, pale, and still.
Old male, pale, and still. So, listen, we're going about an hour and 40 minutes. But before we go, I just want to play a little game, right? I'm the mayor, right? I win. I actually win because I run for mayor in New York City because I'm saying, you know what? I could do anything. I could steal billions in taxpayer dollars. I could enrich my own family and my own friends. I could make all my connections and really go from a 6-figure job to being a billionaire like this in 1 4-year term. So I lie to the people. I con the entire New York City into voting for me. And then I say, but I have one good mission that I want to do. And my one mission is that, I'm like, I want to be like Eric Adams. I'm going to give my friends all the crumbs. But I'm going to give Eric crumbs, but I'm going to give him an actual mission, unlike what Eric Adams did to his friend. So I'm going to say, Eric, I can't make you the police commissioner because you're the most complained cop and it doesn't look right. And I can't make you the head of public safety because I don't want it to look like, Eric Adams when he put Phil Banks in charge of it. Not that you're Phil Banks, but I'm just saying. But I don't want to do that, So I want you to go out and recruit the best people for the NYPD. I don't care gender. I don't care race. I don't care sexual orientation. I want a 5-year plan. I don't want you to get them right now. I want you to get to all the places. I want to get to these people when they're young. I want to get to people who are going to become cops. Could you come up with a plan to recruit who's going to be the best? Doesn't matter. I don't care, men, women. Where do you go? Where do you send your recruitment teams, Eric?
Well, if I was Tanya Meisenhold, I would start going to gay bars. I would have, right? I mean, but no, the reality is, if I was in charge of recruitment, I would start going to high school football games. I would go to college football games. I would go to all these events and arenas where there's sports oriented. Why? Because kids that are in sports, I would go to wrestling teams. Kids that do sports already understand structure. They understand authority. They have a coach that they have to listen to. They have a team, so they know how to work with others. They know how to work with peers. They're already physically tested. They're pressure tested. These are the type of people that I would segue into. I would target for recruitment. I don't care if they're white, black, Hispanic, gay, straight, have sex with donkeys. If they have all these attributes, these are the people that I would target for the police department. And I would also go to recruitment centers where kids are joining the military. I would also target those kids. Say, hey, join the military and also join law enforcement. You could join the United States Reserves. You could join the Marines, any branch, join the reserves, go to boot camp, go to combat training, go to school, go to officer school, whatever you want to do. And when you come back from your training, go to the police department. These are the types of young men and women that I would target. Absolutely. And if I was Tanya Meisenholder, like I said, I'd be going to gay bars. I'd be going to yoga classes. This is what I'd be doing.
Yeah, you'd be going to, you'd be going to like Asian art classes to understand, you sure? She's like, I'm an artist. And I don't want to be a cop. Like, sorry. But, I 100%, definitely. That is exactly what I would do. I would target youth who are partaking in any type of sports, gymnastics, dance, karate, jiu-jitsu, go to all these places, look for recruiting. I would bring back the PAL, which we all played in when we were kids in New York City. I would bring back, if I was an actual mayor, because I would never be a mayor like Eric Adams, I would bring back the PAL program. I would put money into our youth, right? Stop what does he say? He wants to dam the many rivers that flow into the river. He wants to dam the many rivers that flow into the sea of gun violence. So let's start damming those rivers. Like, target when they're young. Get on the 5-year plan. Bring back the PALs. Have cops in there. Have a heavy portion in recruitment. When kids are no longer eligible to be in the PAL because they're aging out, start to recruit them for the cadet program. Listen, you can't be in here anymore, but you could come work with us. You could be a cadet in here, right? You could do this. Start them young. Start grooming these kids young through the PAL, through high school dance teams, football teams, cheerleading teams, whatever. Start hitting all of these places. Hit everywhere. Maybe even hit those art classes and hit all that other stuff. But you got to target the youth. And I think ultimately, I'm just going to always go back to that lady who was in, and I got to get her name, and I got to get that speech for you. But she was in charge. She was the CEO of Coca-Cola. She was an Indian woman, and she goes to the police department for an all-in and a conference, an executive all-in, and they're bringing business leaders up. And of course, some clown white woman from the NYPD had to ask, what was your diversity, equity, inclusion strategy? And she's like, well, my diversity, equity, inclusion strategy was simple. I targeted the best, most qualified people for this job. And when I did that, my staff was diverse. And that's what the NYPD should do. So this whole 30 for 30 initiative, with all of their conjecture and their opinion, really, at the end of the day, it violates equal opportunity law. It's discriminatory against males in policing. It's not bringing up women in policing. It's actually, they're not even reading this. If I was a woman, I'd be like, oh, why would I want to take that job?
So, you know, I know we didn't mention, I would actually go to church. I would go to church, go to synagogues, things like that, where people have values, where they're there with families. They're already part of structure. They believe in St. Michael. They believe in higher powers. These are people you also want in law enforcement. And yeah, you're right. You can go to art classes, you know, and go to young kids. The bottom line is, police work is already diverse, and I think that's ultimate, right, John? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Police work is already diverse. It's as diverse as possible. What we need to change is the recruitment process. The diversity needs to be in the attributes of the candidate. Are they meek? Are they timid? Are they docile? Or are they strong? Are they confident and secure themselves? Those are the diversity traits that I'm looking for when it comes to recruitment. Are you confident but humble? Right? I don't want someone who's cocky and arrogant. I want someone who's confident and humble. Are you willing to learn? Are you, because I don't want someone that's meek and timid. I want someone that has the potential. These are not, I'm not looking to see what you look like. I'm not looking to see what color you are. I'm not looking to see who you bet at night, what kind of animals you like. I could care less. I want to know if you have the attributes and the traits to do this profession. And there are certain traits. And that's why I say policing is not an equitable profession. I don't believe it's an equitable profession. It's a profession that takes unique people with just an extreme amount of compassion for people. And those unique qualities are just willing to put your life on the line for others. That's very simple. Are you willing to put your life on the line for others? That's the TC puts Eric, stay away from the zoos.
So so the lady that I was speaking about was Indra Nui. She's an Indian American, a business executive and former CEO of PepsiCo. Indian-born American. That's what she said. If I go for the best people. Rich Kentaff says, my dad always told me, surround yourself with the best people possible, especially if you ever get in a leadership position. He never mentioned race, sex, anything other than the best. And that's not what we're doing. You know, like Juju, like what Juju sees is he doesn't understand that, like, what Juju sees is he sees us as, and what he's saying here is retired, old, white, unvaccinated, misogynistic males preaching about true equitable treatment for the historically marginalized and oppressed. Juju loves all people. But that's how he sees us, right? And that's fine. That's his worldview. Everybody's entitled to their worldview. But when you look at us, what you should see is two white old males who could run circles around all the police recruits right now and all the young candidates in the NYPD, and sit there and say, where did we go wrong? Why do we have a bunch of mid-40s, early 50-year-olds out here doing podcasts and everything else instead of still in policing? Where did policing go wrong? Are we not the type of people that you want in policing? And when you look around, you got to say, yeah, right? Because if we were the type of people that you wanted, we would have had our views, our thoughts. You would have brought our voices to the table. You wouldn't have threw us out. Our perspectives would have mattered. You would have cared about why we were leaving. You would have tried to not get us to leave instead of calling back people who failed the psych like they're currently doing and saying, what could we do to get you to take the job, or people who turned down the job. Instead of doing that, the NYPD would still be fully staffed. And that's not what we're doing, because ultimately what we're saying, it's perfectly fine to discriminate against males. It's perfectly fine to discriminate against white males. It's perfectly fine to discriminate against Christian males because, hey, we got to beat the patriarchy. So, I mean, to me, this whole thing could be summed up in it's a sexist, racist ideology. It's just another furthering of this DEI movement. And even though Trump came in and he's said he's removing DEI federally, it's going hot and heavy in the cities like New York City and all the other blue Democratic cities.
Rob Lukash, my brother, how you doing? Makes a great point right here. They only bring the voices to the table who have the answers they want. That's exactly true. Someone had mentioned earlier in the comments that they don't want to discuss what we're discussing, and that's the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear what we're saying, John. It's the truth. They want people to back what they're saying because they know there's no study behind it. So as the good Sal Greco would say, they find low information people to actually agree with their agenda, because this is a total agenda. And until then, Tanya Meisenholder, if you don't show us the research and you don't show us the data and you don't show us the study, we've debunked all the information on your 30-30 and showed that you, as the former deputy commissioner of EEO, is actually violating your own policy. You violate your own policy. This is discriminatory and it's racist in every aspect of it. I joke around. I talk about, someone's sexual orientation or donkeys, and I just put emphasis so you remember it. But the bottom line is, what's really important is the traits and the attributes of a person and their ability to do the unique and difficult job of law enforcement. And I'll say it again. When it goes down to diversity, equity, inclusion, law enforcement is not an equitable and it's not an inclusive profession. There's only certain people that can do this job, and that's what makes us so proud. Anyone who's active or retired, be proud that you served in law enforcement. It's not for everyone. It's a club, and you ain't in it.
Absolutely. Pat Donahue says, he says, the NYPD went from recruiting the best candidates to now following a forced integration policy that is more coarse on diversity and graduation day statistical news quotes. And so what Pat's talking about is, every graduation ceremony you'll hear, our members are made up from 64 countries across the world and they speak 137 languages. And it's like, all right, it's great. It's a good statistic, but let that statistic be organic. Let's not force anything. Let it be what it is. What's wrong with the white kid that grew up in Brooklyn that became a New York City?
What's
wrong with that kid? Why does his voice not matter? He's a male. He's no good. It honestly, this whole DEI, this whole movement needs to be defeated. And the fact that, honestly, there hasn't been a lot of media around my lawsuit, especially from the MAGA sycophants and all of the right-wing, supposed right-wing media, like all the liberals and Fox News, it really just shows that there is an agenda nationwide on both sides. And if you're outside of that agenda, you will be shut out. Because I personally believe that my lawsuit is a direct lawsuit against DEI, and it's the only lawsuit. The entire police community, including women organizations, should be behind my lawsuit because it really is total discrimination against males. And we've clear as day. And she just continues to double down on it. She's named in a suit, and she just continues to double down on this ideology and relying on studies. Completely flawed. I could pull out any studies I want. I could do the 100 for 100 movement. Yeah, men are better because they bench better. Studies show men do pull-ups. Pull-ups are better for cops. And it's the same thing. Yeah, but studies show. Studies show that they're better at de-escalation because they bench more.
I think Patrick Donahue nailed it. He nailed it, right? What they want to say at the next graduation and the upcoming graduations is, well, congratulations, we have 40 genders. We have 55 pronouns. We have 30 people here love animals. We have 25 cops that identify as furries. That's what they want. That's what they want it to sound like. It sounds funny because it's so idiotic, but that's what they want. That's the reality. Pat Donahue, you nailed it, brother. Absolutely. Shout out to Stephen S. He says the most inclusive flag in the world is the American flag. You're absolutely right. America accepts everyone. But they're trying to turn it on its head. This is a globalist idea, and America is at the forefront of it. But you're right, John. You're right. I have to piggyback on what you said. We have to fight this. We have to fight this DEI. This DEI is diversity, equity, and infection. This is an infection to the entire country. We can't allow it. It doesn't matter. Let's go back to what the real traits are. Do people have the qualities? Do they have the ability? Do they have the capabilities to be police officers? Do they have the capabilities to be firemen? Do they have the capabilities to serve in the military? Let's talk about those actual traits, the real traits that we talk about. And that's, John, it's kind of funny, right? Kind of like this knuckle dragger, but that's what their impression that they're trying to imply to people is that white, straight males are these stupid idiots walking around who can't think and they're not willing to have real conversations. And I think it's completely offensive and it's so obtuse. So Dr. Tanya Meisenholder, I'm sure you'll be informed about this podcast. Watch it. If you want to come on this podcast, we welcome you and we'll have a conversation. Opposition.
I don't recommend you do until the lawsuit.
Well, when the lawsuit's over.
Yeah, I don't recommend that you do.
And hopefully by then she's not broke. If you need, we'll pay for your transportation. Opposition meets opportunity.
So VSS Mentores, $10. He says, all of this is meant to forcibly rip society down and rebuild it into a centralized utopia they want. Own nothing, be nothing, have no voice, and demonize all that is good. And, so Police One, right? They used to share a lot of my posts. They don't anymore. And that's fine. I don't care. But you would think that this would be a highlight of policing, that, hey, look, there is a lawsuit against the 30 for 30 initiative. There is a lawsuit against DEI in policing. But all of the police leaders, all of the big, bad, black, back to blue people, the FOP, who's the little guy with the glasses, the little skinny guy? He's always working out. Everybody, Gamaldi or whatever his name is. Where is he talking about any of this? Where is he? No, all he does is he gives the numbers of cops that are dead all the time. Oh, this is shot. All right, Joe. So what do you plan to do about it, Joe? You know how many police officers were shot in the line of duty? Yeah, I know. Thanks for giving us the tally. Is that your job? Is that what you do? You just give us a death tally? You give us a shooting tally? That's what you do? Where are these organizations to get behind this and say, you know what? I read this article. I read the mission in this, and no police department in this country should adopt these policies because they're not rooted in fact and they're based in discrimination. Where are these organizations? Where's the FOP? Where's any of them? I don't see any of them. Where are the unions? Where are they? Where is the police leadership? No, they're all tying on to this. They're all tying on to this. Yeah. Women are better at de-escalation. It's like, what? Where'd you get that from?
I like to also know, if you make a complaint to OEEO and say, hey, I'm a white alpha straight male and I've been discriminated against in the NYPD. I'm currently a police officer and I work in such and such precinct. Where does that complaint go? Does that go right in the trash? Put that in the shredder? Where does that complaint go? If you say I'm a white alpha male, I'm straight, I work in the NYPD, I work at whatever precinct, I work in the 7-5, and I feel I've been discriminated against, where does that complaint go? Because Tanya Meisenholder says, you're a knuckle dragger, and you're the one that's discriminatory. But now you're the white male calling up saying, I've been discriminated against. Does that just go immediately in the shredder? Obviously, that's not going to be investigated. Stephen S. says it right here. That complaint goes nowhere. John, you know it. That complaint goes absolutely nowhere. I like to know, where does that complaint go? Right in the trash.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. All right, so let's start to wrap this up. We said we were only going to do an hour, and of course we did 2 hours.
Yeah.
We had about 800 people on here. For those of you that watch this on YouTube, we had a little hiccup when we started. We don't know what happened, but it didn't go. So I had to pull the stream down and re-put it up when we started. But the beginning part of this available on X at the Finest Cast, or you could go over to Rumble to watch the beginning part of it at the Finest Unfiltered. We didn't miss too much, probably missed about 5 minutes of it. So we apologize for that. Not sure what happened. That was a hiccup on YouTube, not us. But we're glad we got it back up. I just think, again, 30 for 30 is a discriminatory practice. I don't support it at all. I don't believe that I believe it's rooted in the same things that it's accusing departments of doing, I believe it's exactly accusing others of what you were guilty of. And, you know, we're joking around a lot about the 100 for 100 movement and all that stuff, but that's what I'm hearing from them. You know, they're accusing us of being exactly what they are. And it's discriminatory and it's wrong. And we need to restore equal opportunity in this country. The best person for the job. That's it. Let it be organic.
Coffee and donuts to Juju. Juju's been leaving some quite often some coffee and donuts. We appreciate it. Shout out to you, Juju. That's the bottom line. What we discuss here today is necessary conversations. We need to have these conversations more often in public. They need to be heard. No longer should law enforcement act like children, be seen and not heard. These are real conversations that need to be heard. Combat lack of data with actual evidence-based information. Combat their data with anecdotal experience and actual evidence. You heard it here today because there's zero evidence and there's zero research other than being discriminatory on behalf of Dr. Meisenholder when she refers to white straight males as knuckle draggers. We should all take this personally. This should be offensive to women. This should be offensive to men. This should be offensive to white. This should be offensive to black. Because you should say to yourself, if I want a career in law enforcement, I want to be viewed for my capabilities, for my traits, not by the way I look, not by who I'm married to, not by who I sleep with, not by how I think, but do I have the ability and capabilities to do that job? That's how you should be measured. So stay with us. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:05 Eastern Time, of course, 5:05 Pacific Time. Tomorrow, we got Detective Mike Smith, a detective from the 5th Precinct, a friend of mine. We work together, 120 Precinct, a real cop. Check him out. He will be here tomorrow, bright and early in the morning. Thank you for being with us. And as always, take care. And Jack, thank you for your production. Good job, Jack, who's in the back. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, that's it, people. We'll be back at you 8:05 live tomorrow. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you tomorrow.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.